Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review for you all. This movie is a drama from Austria, English language, released in the year 2023, directed by Jessica Hausner, and this film is called Club Zero. So Club Zero is based in a boarding school, a prestigious boarding school, and a new teacher has been appointed to teach a class about conscious eating. So she's going to give the benefits of eating healthy and improving these children's lives. But unfortunately there is something sinister that is coming to the surface, and by the time that parents realise this, it may already be too late. So whether or not that's the case is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Club Zero. I went into this movie with absolutely no outside influence. No one talked about this movie before I watched it, and so that was very exciting. It's a rarity to come into a film that is really under the radar. And so this is a European film. It has Mia Wasikowska, who is actually from the city that I was born in here in Australia, so that's very interesting. And so having those two together, and I saw the trailer, I thought, alright, well this is a movie that I'm hoping is going to be absolutely fantastic. And after watching Club Zero, I will say that although it wasn't fantastic, it's a movie that does come with its problems. It's incredibly interesting, and it's incredibly European. So if you're not familiar with European cinema, I can understand if you absolutely hate this movie, because there is a strong sense of monotony. There's a strong sense of ugliness to this movie that can make it very boring, but if you're prepared to look at the minor details underneath the surface, it does have a very strong sort of driving force. And so I thought that was really, really interesting. This is a movie about the power of manipulation. This is the movie about vulnerability being preyed upon and how dangerous that can be, especially in a school system, and also the destructive nature of eating. Every day, a part of everyday life is to eat, but if put into the wrong hands, it can be absolutely devastating. This is what can create eating disorders. You know, this is something that can tear families apart, and so it's a very, very touchy subject that this movie takes upon, and I thought as though it took it in a way that was very deadpan humorous, but also very respectful, and so that's something that I appreciated. It wasn't making a mockery out of this, because a lot of people do suffer from these eating disorders, and this is the movie about, as I said, that manipulation of that vulnerability. And so I thought that was scary in itself, and so the movie has a genuinely sort of terrifying feeling underneath in a very subtle way. The whole film strives on that subtlety, and so if you're prepared to look at the details, I thought as though this was actually quite a powerful film. This is a movie about the school system. Mrs Novak, played absolutely fantastically by Mia Wasikowska, gives a very subtle but very uneasy performance, and the whole film has that sense of unease through the interactions between these characters. It's a very, very bizarre and quirky film, and so again, that is very European. I thought as though it was very interesting that Ulrich Siedel was connected to this movie. Now, Ulrich Siedel is a master of Austrian cinema, and what he does, he creates that monotony, he creates that boredom, he creates the ugliness to mould a character of its own. And so it's the ugliness of humanity done in a way that is very different. Now, I don't necessarily love Ulrich Siedel, but I thought as though this was very interesting, because this is a very Austrian film. Although it's spoken in English, I felt as though it had a lot of tributes to Ulrich Siedel. So if you're an Ulrich Siedel fan, you're going to understand how this movie actually comes across. And so the movie has very dull colouring. It is vibrant in the way that some of the scenes come about, but then as the movie goes on, it starts to get darker and the whole film starts to get greyer. And I thought that was actually quite interesting. And so the overall visuals tell a story of its own, and it's a very unconventional way. So again, unconventional storytelling is not everybody's to everybody's liking, so you have to be very careful with that. I thought as though there were some very grossed out moments. I thought, oh wow, okay, I wasn't expecting that, but that just adds to that sense of ugliness. And so there's always that tension that's simmering underneath, and you feel as though it's a powder keg, it's about to explode, and at the end I thought as though it was very, very haunting, and so I thought that was good. So Mia Wasikowska's performance was fantastic, as I said. The cinematography was very quirky and uneasy, and it just creates that sense of discomfort. The whole film has a level of uncomfortable sort of quality that makes it a very psychological experience, and so I thought that was decent. If I have issues with this movie, it's not a perfect film for the simple fact that it overuses its aces. Now, at the start of the film, I thought as though the camera work was very interesting. It zooms in and it zooms out, but it goes to a point where it does it so many times you start to become a little bit irritated. I thought as though it had a trick up its sleeve, but it didn't have any other tricks, and so it just had to keep using that. So if you become desensitized to a way of visualizing something, you start to have a problem, and that's exactly what I had with this movie. And also the soundtrack. Again, it overuses uses that soundtrack. And so it had some really good positives to the film, but because it didn't have enough positives to carry it over the finish line, it starts to overuse it. And so if you're recycling something to a point, it does become a little bit tiresome by the time you finish. And that's unfortunately the issue I had with Club Zero. But pushing that aside, it is very European, it's very Ulrich Siddle-like. So if you are a fan of that, then this is a movie I'd definitely recommend. It is a film that's going to be very thought-provoking, it's a very psychologically tormenting film, but it does it in a respectful way, and there are moments that are darkly humorous, but it's not over the top, it's not poking fun at the very, very touchy psychological themes that it's depicting. So if it sounds like your kind of thing, it's a very uncomfortable watch. If you're a fan of European cinema, Club Zero is definitely recommended. I'm going to give this film 3.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.